Hey everyone, so I'm just going to do a quick run through of what we covered in class today. I think it was a really successful session. It seemed like you guys were very quickly on your way towards translating what we had discussed into code, and so just want to give you a really sort of quick refresher so you can get a handle on how that's done, and then your assignment will build off of this. So as you can see, I've got Aptana going here. I'm just choosing my workspace. And I can create as many projects as I want within this workspace. We'll start from scratch again on this one. Last week's videos were really just sort of for, oops, you can actually see the beginning of today's lesson happening here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a new file. So I'm going to go up to File. I'm going to choose my new from template, HTML, right? This should be starting to get kind of familiar to you guys. And I'm going to say, check, whoops. So actually this is a really good example. You see what happened just there. I accidentally deleted a caret in my H1 tag there, and what I saw right away was actually that the coloration of it changed. It went from being this sort of golden color or light brown color to being white, right? Which is a good indicator to me that something's not quite right about it. So I'm going to go ahead and add that back, and I'm just going to say check console for main activity here, right? So again, just kind of providing that clue to myself. It's now going to ask me where I want to save this. I'm going to save this in the project JavaScript basics, and I'm going to say CandySorter.html is the name of my file. So as we did before, kind of glossed over this. We're gonna start to break this down a little bit more next week, but you may or may not have noticed that there's actually two sections to our web page here. We have something called a head, and we have a body. And when we do our scripting for now, we will change this in coming weeks, but we actually we put our script tags in the body tag. We'll be using the head tag next week, and you'll see that in videos that sort of leading up to next week's lessons. But for now, we're going to work in the body tag, and we'll sort of see what the distinction is in a little bit. So if we remember, we started out by, so the first thing I wanted to do is I'm going to describe my candy data, right? And if we recall from class, our candy list we decided was an array of objects. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put my square brackets indicating an array. This is how I like to do this. I like to kind of work inside what I know are matching brackets so I don't accidentally leave one off at the end and cause problems. And so I know that my first element, right, is going to be, again, because it's an object, we're going to be using curly braces. And I'm going to say name, right? I've decided it's going to have a name property. And I think that the first one in our list this morning was Crackle. Oops, and actually I already have a typo there. Name Crackle. And then I think we had a couple of good bars. So you see all of the work that Aptana is doing for me right here. I mean, just the very fact that it adds the double brackets, that it adds the second set of brackets, the second set of quotes, it closes everything for us. Like, that's saving us a lot of typing right there, and a lot of really headachy typos. So I'm being careful to put a comma between every element of my list here. And let's see, name. I think there was a special dark, right? Excuse me. And then I think my last one was just a plain old fashioned Hershey's. Right? So, a couple of you asked questions about white space, and again, it doesn't actually matter. This is a really good place to test out the fact that, you know, actually we could do it like this. I could actually structure my array so that the individual elements were much more kind of visible like this. And sometimes when we do this, we sort of intentionally, we kind of put the square brackets at the top and bottom on their own lines just to really illustrate the fact that this is an array and that each of these elements is individual. What we notice here though, and this is maybe seems more obvious when it's on one line, is that we don't have a comma after the end of the last element. This is very, very similar to English, where we only put a comma between elements, but not at the last element. After the last element, we put sort of our period. So that's something to look out for. Remember again that this is actually JSON, right? This is a JavaScript object. And so we'll see more complex versions of these objects moving forward in the class, but it kind of gives you a handle on the way that these translate. So we have this array of objects. I'm going to actually leave that like that, just to sort of demo how and that it works. So as we know, our console log function, always our friend here. And so I'm going to take this opportunity to try to find my, here we go, try to find my folder. So here's my new candy sorter. I'm going to open this up with, why can I never find Chrome? Google Chrome, because there's something wrong with the icon. It goes to show you how important icons can be, right? So inspect element, I'm going to come over here, right? So by default, of course, it's showing me my HTML tags. I slip over to console and I get this array 5. Now actually, some of you may have noted, some of you guys got this in class as your output when you logged this. Some of you got array, you know, it said object, 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 right? So probably what we're dealing with is slightly different versions of Chrome. That's okay. As we saw too, right? We can really kind of dig right into our data here, which is so handy. I can't even tell you guys just what an improvement this is over not having inspection tools. So that looks like a pretty good start. And then the next thing that we were interested in doing was writing our function. So I want to write a function that will sort my candy into favorite and unfavorite, right? So I'm going to say function sort candy, right? And I need to pass this, I need to give it a name, right? Remember we discussed how this is kind of like the uni for the function, right? A name that it can use to refer to whatever list of objects I give it, whatever candy list or candy collection I give it. So I'm going to choose candy collection. And what we realize here, right, is that a really good point that was brought up in class is, you know, is this sort of relationship that a function is actually a variable, right? It's a thing. It's a very, very special type of variable. But just like an array or a string or an object, right, it takes up space in memory, right? We're naming a particular type of thing. We're saying it's a particular, it is in its own way a particular data type. But a complex one, obviously much more complex than, say, a number. But when we do this, we can see the same way that var lights up yellow, we see function light up yellow, right? So that's maybe a little bit of an indicator to how it's understanding it. And that candy collection here, right, is this sort of internal name that our function is going to use to refer to whatever the list of candy is, in our case candy list, that we're going to use to do this function, that we're going to apply to this function. So I'm going to say write a function that will sort my candy into favorite and unfavorite. I'm going to go ahead and say this function should be passed an array of objects, each of which is a candy. Okay? So obviously there's some abstraction going on here. I'm not literally passing it pieces of candy. I'm passing it data that describes pieces of candy. So I've done that. Now we know that our next thing is that we have this whole list of candies. We want to do some work on them one at a time. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a variable, num candies. Now again, you know, one of the things we're going to want you guys to play with in this assignment is the actual names of the variables. You know, to make sure that, you know, that you just get some practice naming variables yourselves, understanding kind of how those things function. So var num candies is going to be candy collection.length, right? Length being that built-in function. And now we get to our for loop. So I'm going to say var I equals 0, I is less than num candies. Again, we have start condition, test or end condition, right? We're only going to continue to loop as long as that variable I is less than the number of candies that we've set aside up here. And then I'm going to say, okay, I want a shortcut for finding out what the current candy is, right? So it's going to be whatever, I've got candy collection at position I, right? So first time through, I equals 0, it's going to be the first one, then I equals 1, it's going to be the second one, etc., etc. And now I'm going to do console log CurCandy and see what I get there. Oh, wait a second. We saw this happen in class already, where I started doing this work, but my console log wasn't going to produce much because I hadn't actually called the function. So in order to get anything to show up, I'm going to say sort candy, candy list, right? So now, with luck, if I come to my, where are you, Chrome? Did I close it? Oh no, there it is. Here we are. I'm going to do a reload, and very nice, right? Starting to get these pieces together. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I now need to do things. I want to actually do my sorting, right? So the one thing I need is I need a place to put this. Now you notice I've got a lot of white space in here. I'm just doing that because for me personally, it makes it easier to read. I suggest that you've got as much space as you want. Don't be shy. Spread it out. Add lots and lots of comments. It's going to make it a great reference for you all later on. So I'm going to say var fave candy. Right? And remember, we talked about our shortcut for declaring, for telling the computer that this is an array. I can just say, hey, it's an empty array. I could also put new array in here. So why don't we do both? Okay. Let me see how this works. And now I need to put in my conditional. I want to say if CurCandy, and what's the property? Well, I only have one property right now. CurCandy.name equals, that's our special conditional comparison function, right? 2 equals means are the things on the right and the left side same? 1 equals says, put the value on the right side into the box with the label on the left side. And if it equals crackle, then I'm going to say faveCandy.push current candy, right? In other words, I want you to go ahead and add that candy to my fave candy list. And otherwise, it is not one of my favorite candies, so I want you to unfave candy, push current candy. Okay? So, now, what the heck am I trying to what is my output going to be on this? So what I want to see, and we'll do this in my console log, is I'm going to hopefully see that when at the end of this, now this is where our sort of visual nesting comes in handy, right? We see that things kind of start to get far apart. So I've used this alignment. So there's my if-else statement, right? There's my for statement right here, okay? So this bracket ends my for statement. So I want to test the values of my fave and unfave arrays within the sort candy function, right? So, and actually this is a really handy thing, end of sort candy. I'm going to encourage you guys to do this too. End of for loop. In fact, I could have done this at the outset, right? So now it's really easy for me to see where in the code is after the for loop is over but before the function has ended. That kind of thing will get you all the time. And so now I'm just going to say console log fave candy, console log unfave candy. And if I've done this correctly, what I should get is should get array with 1 crackle, because I can tell from my list that's how many I should have. Should get array with 4 other candies. And again, if we hop this up, okay, so I've got crackle and my 4 other candies. So for your guys' exercise, you're going to do a few things differently. I'll outline that in the assignment, but basically what I want you to do is have slightly different candies and also maybe test for something a little bit different. And as always, Your comments are key here. That's going to be a main way that we evaluate this code. So you want to get this result that we saw with 1 crackle and 4 other candies, or 1 favorite candy and 4 other candies. But making sure the commenting is thorough is going to be a really big part of it. All right, I'll see you next time.